Alright, hey guys, what's up? Welcome to ETSKI Tutorials, and this is FPS 1.8. In this episode, we're going to be learning how to make a simple gun that just follows the camera. It's going to sit in your bottom right-hand corner of the screen and move where your camera moves, but it's going to have a smooth damp function on it so that it looks like it has some weight to it. So it's not just going to snap to your camera and stay where your camera is. It's actually going to kind of feel like it has some weight to it and actually going to like take a split second to get to where the camera is pointing. So yeah, that being said, first of all, I just want to apologize in case there's any glitches with this new video, because as you can see, I have a pretty new setup behind me. I got a green screen going, and I have full control over the computer screen. So hopefully this all works out. If it does work out, I think it's going to be pretty cool, so let me know what you guys think. And yeah, I guess let's get started. Here's my little text file. Alright, so here's a list of all of the variables that we're going to be using inside of a new script called gun script, or gun move script. We'll just call it gun script. It doesn't matter what we call it. So these are all the new variables that we're going to be using inside of gun script. And the first one we have is camera object, and that is a variable type game object. So remember, if it's a variable type game object, that means it's remembering one specific game object. And that specific game object is going to be our camera. And what we're going to do inside of the inspector and just inside of the Unity interface in general is we're going to drag the camera from the hierarchy, we're going to drag it into the inspector and drop it right on top of the variable camera object inside of the gun script so that our gun can remember what object the camera is, because we're going to be referencing not only the camera's transform and the camera's position, we're also going to be referencing the camera's look script. So it's a whole lot easier just to save the camera object than to look for it in code every time we need it. And it's going to be a little bit more efficient in code this way too, so it'll run faster and give you more frames per second on your computer. I don't think it's going to be a noticeable difference, but technically it's a little bit faster. So our next variable is target X rotation and target Y rotation. So these are going to be Euler angles, just like in our camera's look script, how the Y rotation was left and right and the X rotation was up and down. Our gun is going to use the exact same thing, and it's just going to target the camera's X and Y rotation, and then we're going to add a smooth damp function to it so that it doesn't snap to the camera's X and Y rotation. It's going to smoothly move to it and look like it has some weight when we make sharp turns. And then next we have target X rotation V and target Y rotation V, and these are going to be our velocity variables that we're going to be using inside of the smooth damp function. So we don't need to set any value to these. The smooth damp function is going to take care of that for us. It's just a variable that Unity needs for smooth damp. We've gone over smooth damp like 10 times already, so I'm sure you guys know how smooth damp works. Next we have target Y rotation V. Next we have rotation speed. So rotation speed is going to basically be the smaller the number, the more snappy our gun is going to snap to the camera. The larger the number, the more slow and more heavy it's going to look. So we can adjust that number depending on whether we're using like a minigun or a pistol. Like if it's a pistol, we want a really small number because we want it to snap really fast. And if it's like a minigun, that's going to be heavy, so it's going to be slow to like look at the camera. And then next we have hold height and hold side. These are going to basically be an X and a Y positioning for our gun, because we don't want the gun to be straight up right in the middle of the screen. We only want to do that when we're actually aiming down the barrel. When it's just at a resting position, it's just going to be just in the bottom right hand corner of our screen. So remember, this game we're going for like Call of Duty style, where you hold down right click and it aims, as opposed to like Halo style where it's always in the bottom right hand corner and you don't actually aim. So hold height, we want it to be a negative number because we don't want to hold the gun like above our head, we want to make it go down a little bit. And hold side, we're either going to make it positive or negative depending on whether you want it to be on the left hand or right hand side of the screen. So yeah, those are all our variables. Now let's scroll down to our first line of code. Hopefully you can read this. Alright, so we have transform.position equals camera object dot transform.position plus the quaternions Euler angle, and we're only going to be affecting the target Y rotation, and then we're going to be multiplying it by hold side and hold height. So let's go over this in more detail. So we're affecting the position of our transform, so we're just moving our game object, which is the gun. And first we're going to just have it snap to the camera's exact position. So we're remember, camera object is a game object, so we need to access the transform of that before we can access the position of the camera object. And then we're going to be adding quaternion dot Euler angles and affecting just the Y rotation. So the Euler angles, we have the Y rotation, so that is going to be the left and right, and we're going to leave out X rotation because I want to add like a little bit of change when you look up and down, but it doesn't make sense to have any change when you're looking left and right. But up and down it does, because if you're aiming down, that's at a weird angle, so the angle of your gun is going to change a little bit, and when you look up, the angle of your gun is going to change a little bit. So the way things are set up, we're only going to affect the Y rotation. So Euler, or quaternion.Euler returns you a quaternion, and remember, when you multiply a quaternion by a vector 3, what that is going to do is return you a vector 3 that has been rotated by that quaternion. So that is, if a quaternion was pointing down forward on the z-axis, so like a vector 3, like a magnitude vector that is, let's see, 0, 0, 1, that would just be pointing forward in world space. And then a quaternion compared to that, that is how our vector 3 is going to be rotated. So, and we are multiplying the vector 3 hold side on the x-axis and hold height on the y-axis and 0 on the z-axis, because we don't need the gun to move forward and backwards for now. Later on we are going to make the gun move forward and backwards so that it has some recoil when you shoot, but for now we're just going to leave it as 0. So that is a vector 3 that is holding it, hold height, hold side, and we're just rotating that around the y-axis. So, because if we weren't going to do that, then the gun would like always be over here, and we would like turn, and then the gun would be like that, and we don't want that. We want the gun to follow our character when we turn. So yep, that is the positioning of our gun, and now let's affect the rotation of our gun. So these are basically just smooth damp functions. So target x rotation equals smooth damp, and then we give it the rotation that we're at now, target x rotation, and then we're going to access the camera's x rotation, and we're going to smooth damp towards that. So to get that, that is this line right there. So camera object dot get component mouse look script. So get component can be used for any type of component, and the particular component that we're looking for is the mouse look script. And when we press dot x rotation, it is accessing the variable x rotation out of the mouse look script. Now remember, you can't do this if the variable is set to private, because that means that that variable is for that script only. So it needs to be a public variable, or just a plain var x rotation like we have, and then we just hide it, we hide it with the @hide in inspector so we can't see it. So it's still accessible from other scripts, but it hides in our inspector as if it were a private variable. But we don't want x rotation to be a private variable. So that accesses the x rotation of the camera object, and then we have target x rotation v, so that is just the velocity variable that we don't need to worry about. Smooth damp will take care of that for us. And then rotation speed, and that is the number where if it's smaller it snaps, and if it's larger it's really heavy and moves slowly. And then we just have the exact same line down here, except all of the X's have been changed to Y's. Exact same thing, just along the Y-axis instead of the Z-axis. So let's go to our next line of code, and that is simply transform.rotation equals quaternion.Euler x rotation y, or target x rotation, target y rotation 0. Transform.rotation is going to be a quaternion. So when we have it equal something, or if we set it to something else, we have to set it as a quaternion. And quaternion.Euler returns you in a quaternion based on the Euler angles that you give it, or in x, y, and z of rotation. And the first one is target x rotation, target y rotation, and we don't need to rotate around z because z is this movement. And target x rotation, target y rotation are the current rotation that we get out of the smooth damp function. So that's where the gun is going to be at the exact moment, so that we get that like smoothing motion. So yeah, I think that's everything that we need to go over for this particular script. So I am just going to cut the green screen and just go to straight screen recording now. Alright, here we are inside of Unity, and let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is create a gun. Now what we want to do is actually utilize the game view so that we know what the gun is going to look like as we are modeling it, or not really modeling it, but just, you can import a model if you want, but I'm just going to create a bunch of cubes just for the sake of simplicity. So what we're going to do is highlight the main camera, and then you can either double click on it in the hierarchy, or you can press F, but either way you just want to focus on it so it's in the very center, or so that the where the camera of the scene view is centered on the main camera, because the center of the scene view camera, or when you rotate around, is where we create new game objects. So we're going to create an empty game object and call it gun. So now we have an empty game object in the exact placement of the camera. So now let's create another new game object, but we're going to make it a cube. And let's turn off the box collider because we don't need any collisions on this. And let's make it a very, very generic gun shape. There we go, generic enough. And we're going to move it forward a bit. Let's see, yeah, that should be good. And now let's drag and drop that onto gun so that we have a folder. Alright, and now we're going to take the gun and move it down and to the right a little bit. So now you can see in our game view we have a cube that kind of represents where our gun is going to be. So I'm going to select the cube and I'm going to resize it a bit. I really have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just making this gun up as I go. Now I'm going to press Command D or Control D if you're on a PC and just create a second cube. I don't really know what I'm doing with this. I think I'm going to create the little reticule aimer. That's a 0. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I don't want to bore you guys. But just so you can have the very basic idea of how to model a gun with cubes. I don't know. Good enough. That's going to be our gun. It looks like a gun, or it barely looks like a gun, but at least it looks like something. So, yes, here we have an empty game object. Now the next thing we need is the script. So let's go down to our project window and go down to create new JavaScript, and we're going to call this gun script. There we go. And let's go ahead and open that up. And that is from the other project. Alright. Cool. Here we have a blank new script. Now let's put in all of our variables, and what I need to use my cheat thing to remember all the variables. Where is my text edit? Did I close it? Yeah, I did. Okay, I saved it somewhere. There it goes. So first we need camera object. There we go. And now let's go to Unity, and let's apply the gun script. There we go. Okay, so now we have the gun script on our gun, and just remember, I don't have it on any of the cubes inside of the gun. I have it on the empty game object. Well, it's not an empty game object anymore. It has a gun script attached to it. So this is our gun. This is where the script is going to go. And as you can see, here it says camera object, and right now it's set to none. So now there's two ways that we can set the camera to the game object. We can go over here and click on this little circle, and we can go over here to scene, and we can look at everything in here, and here's our main camera. So we could set it that way, or we can go over here in the hierarchy, make sure our gun is selected, and then drag and drop main camera on top of it like that. Either way works. So now we have our camera object saved, and now we can reference it a whole lot faster inside of our code. Now our next variable is target X rotation, target Y rotation. Actually, I'm going to add a @hide in inspector, because why do I always do that? Hide in inspector. That way we don't need to look at it in the inspector, and it doesn't clutter up our gun script when we're just quickly making changes. So variable, what was it? Target X rotation float. And I'm going to be lazy. And we want a Y rotation. Alright, so we have the actual rotation around the x-axis and the actual rotation around the y-axis of our gun, and then we have the two velocity variables for the smooth down function. And the next one we need is var rotate speed. And let's give that a value of 0.2. Actually 0.3. I don't know. We can change it later. I'm just ballparking it like I always do. And what do we need after that? Hold side and hold height. And we know that we want it to be a negative number because we want it to be lower than the camera. I'm just going to guess, see if that's right. Yeah, alright, float. And let's make it, I believe it's going to be a positive number. Actually, I can check this by going into Unity. And we want to go this way, and as you can see on the x-axis, the arrow points that way, so that way is positive. So yes, we do want it to be a positive number. So let's set that to 0.5. Okay, and if you want it to be held off on the left-hand side of the screen, if you're left-handed, I guess, it's going to be a negative number. So let's save that and see how many of those variables we can actually... Okay, so here are the 4 variables that we can affect. We're saving the camera, the speed of how it rotates, and then hold height and hold side. Cool. So let's go over back to our script. In our first line of code, I'm going to be lazy and cheat again, just to remember what this line of code was. Okay, transformed opposition. So we have the position, and we're going to make it camera object dot transform dot position. Alright, so this gives us a factor 3 of exactly where our gun is going to be. So why don't we just save that and see what our code does so far. So, as you can see, the gun is following us, but it is not rotating with the camera. So it's centered right in the middle of our screen, and it looks really ugly. So let's add some more code, because that looks awful. Alright. Let's have it, let's add our quaternion dot Euler 0 on the x-axis, because we don't need to affect it on the x-axis. And we're going to do target. Actually, yeah, target y rotation camera 0. And we're going to multiply that by a vector 3. And we have hold side, hold height 0. Alright, let's test out our code and see how that looks. Oh, as you can see, it is down there. It's not rotating with our screen yet, but at least it's holding it down and to the right. Now, actually, what we can do, here's a little trick if you want to make it sit in the right place. We can go over to our gun, and we can adjust these variables in game. And then we're just going to have to remember, so about -0.2 and 0.2 gives it about there. So we can go back and forth and just keep on adjusting it until it looks good. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to set it to 0.2 and 0.2. And we can fine tune it later. So let's go back to our script and let's make our smooth damp functions. So target x rotation equals mathf dot smooth damp, and then we're going to give it our current variable, which is target x rotation, and then we need to give it the variable that we want it to move towards, and that is going to be camera object dot get component. And that is going to be the mouse look script, not mouse cursor, look script dot x rotation. And then we need the x rotation v, because we need our velocity variable, and then rotate speed, and this is going to be how fast it is going to rotate, or how fast it's going to take this variable to this variable. And let's copy and paste all of that and change all of the x's to y's. And like I always say, make sure you are very careful to get every single one when you copy and paste lines and change all the x's to y's. And make sure you get all the capital and lowercase, because if you miss one, you're going to get glitches, and they're very hard to spot later on. So let's double check that. We got that one. We got that one. It's capitalized. That one, it's lowercase. Capitalized. All right. I think we are good. And this isn't going to. Well, wait. Will this do anything yet? I think. Let's go back to Unity and actually see what it does. I think it will rotate with our camera some slightly. It's kind of doing stuff. but let's actually go to our code and set our transform dot rotation to our target X rotation, target Y rotation. Oops, target X rotation, target Y rotation, and 0. Let's see how that looks. Looking pretty good. Sweet. Let's maximize that so you guys can see it better. Whoop. Maximize on play. Alright, cool. So it's not perfect yet. We got to change our gun model. But as you can see, it is definitely following our camera. I'm going to set the rotate speed to 0.1. So let's see if that's fast enough. Yes, there we go. I like that a whole lot better. So the gun has some weight to it. When we look up and down, you can see that's the angle thing I was talking about. So it's an awkward angle to hold your gun straight up, and it's an awkward angle to hold your gun straight down, especially when you're just casually looking down at a rest. So our gun follows the player, and we walk around, still follows. So yeah, looks pretty good. I think that's all we need to go over this episode. So until next time, this has been FPS 1.8 ET Ski Tutorials. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, tell your friends. I have a Facebook and a Twitter right now if you guys like to use Facebook and Twitter. On Twitter, my name is just ETSki. Actually, you know, why don't I go over to Google Chrome and I will just show you. Twitter.com. So, as you can see, this is my Twitter. It's just ETSki. And my Facebook is ETSki Tutorials. Just search it. You'll find it. I don't really do anything on Facebook. I might use Twitter a little bit. So if you guys want to see me on Twitter and Facebook, you guys can do that. And yeah, until next episode, I'll see you guys later. Keep making games.